Hello, welcome back to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form, continuing Chucktober with day 4, Bride of Chucky. And again, hashtag renewed Chucky, hashtag review Chucky. And I saw that Chucky was apparently listed in Sci-Fi's online bio or something now. So whether that means anything or not, I don't know. I guess we'll see. But talking about the movie Bride of Chucky, this was one I was able to stay up late watching all the way through. I mentioned before that for the others, I've watched each of these at midnight, the day that I plan on talking about them, and then midway through or a little bit through, I end up having to pause it and watch the rest of the morning. But somehow I was able to watch this one all the way through after midnight, which was kind of surprising to me. I just watched the new Joker movie, Joker Fully Ado, and I was thinking of talking about that, like a mini review in front of this one, because they're kind of similar in terms of like the romance angle, but not a whole lot much else. But I think that might end up being its own video, since the more I think about it, the more I feel like I have to say about the new Joker movie. But in short, I enjoyed it. I think it's gonna be really divisive for people, though. But I do think I know what the film is trying to say. How it's kind of it feels very anti edge lord fans, if that makes sense, which types of fans who may have resulted from the first film. But yeah, that's a topic for another time, in between things, whenever I can find the time. But Bride of Chucky, this was released October 16th, 1998, and written by Don Mancini and directed by Ronnie Yu, who, if that name sounds familiar to some of you slasher fans out there, you might know he would later direct Freddy vs. Jason, the 2003 crossover film. And speaking of which, this film opens up with a Lockport Police Department police officer. I think his name is Officer Bailey, if I'm not mistaken. That's the name of one of the officers in this movie. Anyway, he goes to the evidence locker room, and there's a hockey mask, a gardening glove with blades on it. There's a Michael Myers looking mask. There's a chainsaw, and the what looks like the puppets from Puppet Master, which is funny because apparently the original Child's Play was almost a full moon feature. But yeah, these little shout outs to other slasher slash horror franchises, and yeah, it's kind of bizarre, honestly, since I don't think they were all under the same umbrella. Like, these aren't all Universal, so they kind of have to make the hockey mask look really plain. I guess not very Jason specific, stuff like that. But the slasher genre had been going through some changes. Child's Play 3 had come out in 1991, and it was at a time when there is some stuff going on with other franchises. That same year, Nightmare on Elm Street 6, or Freddy's Dead The Final Nightmare, I should say, was released, and that was the end of the main Nightmare films. And then 3 years later, there'd be Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which took place in the quote unquote real world. And you wouldn't get Freddy versus Jason until 2003. And meanwhile, Friday the 13th had its ninth film, Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, which came out in 1993. Really bizarre installment in the franchise that involves body possession, and it's probably one of the most controversial Friday the 13th installments. It could probably go head to head with Jason X in terms of which feels stranger for the franchise. And Texas Chainsaw is Texas Chainsaw. The third one came out 91 as well, I believe, and then the fourth one came out in the mid 90s and was very despised. So yeah, there won't be another one of those until the 2000s remake. And Halloween, uh, in the mid 90s, had part six, The Curse of Michael Myers, which is pretty bad and does a disservice to one of the longtime characters. But then in 1996, you get Scream, and that's a huge influence, not just on this film, Bride of Chucky, but also on some other films that would follow after that. Scream was, it felt like a love letter to horror and slasher franchises and was very meta, kind of deconstructs some of the tropes in all these movies, and it also had some humor to it. So it's really fascinating how you get a potentially Psycho influencing Halloween, and then Halloween influencing Scream, and then you get Scream influencing even Halloween H20 20 years later, which came out the same year as Bride of Chucky, same month even, if I'm not mistaken. If it is October, might have to look that up later, but um, yeah. So that film, that first Scream film, it really invigorated, re-energized interest in trying to revive this franchise. Don Mancini and producer Dave Kirshner were also influenced by Bride of Chucky with this idea of, give Chucky, sorry, influenced by Bride of Frankenstein. I guess Bride of Chucky is just more iconic in my mind than Bride of Frankenstein. So this idea of giving Chucky a bride, and they'd be a double act, and moving away from the Andy Barclay storyline, because after three films that can feel a bit repetitive. So this was a bit of a pivot and also leaned a bit more into the humor, but not as much as the one after this would be. But this was a huge moment for the Child's Play slash Chucky franchise, because this is where they decide, okay, some things can be more comedic in this franchise. So we get the police officer, he gets the remains of Chucky that had been cut up by the fan at that fair in Child's Play 3. In this film, they say Charles Lee Ray's death was 10 years prior. So if in my head Child's Play 3 was 97, then this is 98, 1998, I should say. Um, and so this police officer, he was bribed by Tiffany Valentine, Chucky's girlfriend, before he got gunned down. She manages to use him to get the sliced up Chucky doll parts, and she kills the officer and takes the parts, and then we get this intro that's also people's favorite Chucky movie intro, set to the Rob Zombie song "Living Dead Girl," and it really does stick in your mind. This song, there is a shot where Tiffany is walking toward a doorway, and then they show it from a different angle and another different angle, or maybe different takes, perhaps. And I'd have to look at this again, but it looked to me like she wasn't getting closer to the doorway at all. Like, it kind of felt to me like Monty Python and the Holy Grail when Lancelot is far away and he looks like he's running toward the guards and like just not getting closer. So I thought that was weird, but yeah, this is one of the big favorite intros for Chucky movies, and but it still continues a trend of rebuilding Chucky. We see Tiffany go back to her trailer where she has some other doll parts and cobbles them together to rebuild the doll and stitch it together. So he has this new scarred look, and I like the scarred look. There are some that don't like it very much, but I think some of that has faded, so that dislike, because the scarred look is no longer the default look, thanks to the Chucky TV series, and I guess a couple of installments before it, there are multiple chances to have different kinds of Chucky faces, the scarred look and the smooth face look that he started out with and stuff like that. She also has newspaper clippings. One of them is on an article from the night that Charles Lee Ray got gunned down, and it's dated November 9th, 1988, so the date that the original Child's Play film came out. And from what I remember, this date, the Chucky TV series keeps it as a canonical death date for Charles Lee Ray. If you read the article on the newspaper clipping, there's a quote from Detective Mike Norris talking about the lightning and stuff and saying it's like something out of a horror movie. And I cannot imagine those words coming out of Mike Norris's mouth. Like, give me, I can only suspend my disbelief so much, but that's where I draw the line. But anyway, I do like that there's at least that connection, that nod to the past films. And Tiffany, she has someone who has a crush on her, name's Damien, but Damien doesn't impress her, and she uses a voodoo spell from. I think she read this from the book Voodoo for Dummies. Talking to Damballa and all that, and bringing the Chucky doll back to life, and the Chucky doll messes with Damien and eventually kills him. And so Chucky and Tiffany have their little reunion, and during the exposition, when Tiffany's talking to Damien, she mentions that she and Chucky lived together for years before his death. And what we learned between Chucky and Tiffany in their conversation is that Tiffany has been looking for Chucky for 10 years. And that felt kind of weird to me. Like, how hard would it have been to find the Chucky doll if she has been looking for 10 years? I mean, in Child's Play 2, the end of that movie, the doll gets all, melted up in the warehouse factory place, and, someone died there. So, wouldn't that have been in some sort of news broadcast or newspaper article or something like that? And how hard would it have been to get into that place and retrieve Chucky's remains? I mean, from what we see in the beginning of Child's Play 3, that place has apparently been untouched for years. Really bizarre. Um, but I don't know, or maybe Tiffany tried looking there, got the wrong doll, and didn't realize the melted thing was him. But I mean, that would have to be him though. So I don't know. There's like something about this I've been looking for you for 10 years thing that doesn't completely add up to me. I kind of wish that maybe there had been a line about her being, in jail for 10 years or something, and she couldn't do anything until she got out. But yeah, we find out that the night that Chucky was gunned down in the first film was when Tiffany found a wedding ring, and she thought that, on the mantle of where they live, and she thought that Chucky was gonna propose to her, but it's actually a ring that he stole from someone. And so, they have like a. Tiffany gets upset that she believed all this time that he wanted to marry her, but Chucky does offer to like get hitched, but Tiffany does um, hold a grudge, and he keeps him caged up and whatnot. We also, parallel to this, we meet the new protagonists, I guess you could say, of this film, Jesse and Jade, and they have their gay friend David, who is a really nice guy trying to help them out. Jade's uncle Warren, who is the chief of police, really does not like Jesse, and they try to trick him, thinking that Jade is going to, I think it's prom with David, but he and his other police officer buddy like see through this, and yeah, they really want to keep them apart. I guess trying to do like a Romeo and Juliet type situation. And Jesse lives in this trailer park, so he knows Tiffany, and she tries hitting on him. I'm guessing he's 18, because they do think, Jesse and Jade do talk about, wanting to get married, and But yeah, like, he talks about, he has a girlfriend, and Tiffany tells him to treat her right. So I do like that, even though Tiffany, there's no question that she is sadistic and like, like Chucky is, but she also has these moments where she has a bit of empathy as like treat her well and that type of thing. It's the thing that kind of makes her a little different from Chucky, but make no mistake, she is still a villain. But Chucky, he manages to escape and use the toaster, throw it in the bathtub while Tiffany's taking a bath, and kills her, and does a spell that puts her in the body of this doll that she had brought that's dressed up like a bride. She brought it to sort of taunt Chucky and be like, hey, this is your bride, but now she's in that doll body, so she's in the same boat as Chucky now. Reads the Voodoo for Dummies book. Chucky directs her to a specific page number about the Heart of Damballa, which I thought was odd because when did Chucky have time to read this book and memorize the page number? Because the For Dummies books, from what I understand, were not around in the 80s. So is this an alternate universe where that book series started in the 80s or what? Yeah, I just thought that was weird. Um, but yeah, the Heart of Damballa, it's basically this kind of a retcon, but I read somewhere that apparently it was gonna be a thing for the first movie, but was cut out. I think would have had a different look to it, but it's this amulet thing or medallion, whatever, that Chucky wore around his neck while he died. We don't see it in the first film, but in the newspaper clipping with the photo where it shows him, I think it shows him dead. Which, why would you include that in the newspaper? He has the Heart of Damballa around his neck, and so he's like, "We need to get that, but my body is buried in Hackensack, New Jersey." Um, and it does make you kind of wonder, why didn't he try going after this during the events of the first film? And my headcanon for that is, he just got abandoned by his accomplice, Eddie Caputo. So Chucky feels like the type of character who has like tunnel vision. And so he wants to get back at Eddie. And then once he notices the changes in his body, he learns the stuff is like, okay, I'm going to become Andy Barclay, and maybe after that he would have tried going after the heart, but because he got defeated, he held a grudge against Andy and want to keep going after him, and maybe after 3 tries he's like, okay, let's not do that. We need to get the heart. So that's my little mental gymnastics type thing, I guess. So Tiffany does a phone call to Jesse, and he, she'll pay him to deliver the dolls. She pretends that she and Chucky are dolls she wants delivered to someone, to this cemetery. And so this becomes a road trip movie, and Jesse wants to marry Jade and use the money, the $500 that Tiffany is paying him, and there will be 500 more supposedly. He wants to put a down payment on like an apartment, I guess, and get a job and put her through college. And I know that they're super in love, but I feel like their plan doesn't feel as solid, as easy as they might think it is. But they're like super in love or whatever. I do like Chucky and Tiffany's reactions to all this. I should say that I really like Chucky and Tiffany's chemistry in this installment. Jennifer Tilly and Brad Dourif, they play off each other so well. Um, but yeah, so during this road trip, Warren tries framing Jesse by putting some evidence in his van, without getting him in trouble, drugs, whatever. And Chucky and Tiffany also bond over killing techniques, using this airbag and nails to get Warren, and Chucky's like, why does that look so familiar? So I guess when Chucky was in hell, he saw Pinhead or something. I don't know, or maybe he saw Hellraiser the year before he got gunned down. It's one of those. I don't know. And Warren's cop buddy, well, Warren gets like put stored in this like chest or whatever in the back of a van. But later, Warren's cop buddy finds Jesse and Jade, and is finds the planted evidence, and the planted plant evidence, I guess I should say. Um, and Chucky and Tiffany are fed up with like being held up. They need to get where they need to get. So Chucky ends up blowing up the car of that police officer, ending him. And so Jesse and Jade drive off, and they think that each other is the one who blew him up. So they suspect each other, and they're like, I really like this tension that they love each other, but they don't quite trust each other. Meanwhile, Chucky and Tiffany are bonding so well, and I get rekindling their relationship. So those two get married at Jesse and Jade get married at Niagara Falls, despite having these reservations about whether they can trust each other, which I think is weird. This other couple tries stealing money from them, and so Chucky and Tiffany go after that couple, and Tiffany breaks the glass up above, and there's a waterbed like rips, and there's water and blood everywhere, and Chucky's like, I love you, and he proposes to Tiffany. And this love scene that follows is so absurd and ridiculous. um but yeah, like the dialogue between them is like so funny though. The next day, Jesse and Jade find out about this new scene, this couple, having gotten murdered, and they tell each other that they don't trust each other. And they had also called their friend David, separately, saying that they don't. Jesse doesn't trust Jade, and vice versa. And David shows up here, and he says, they drive off, and David explains, both of you sounded very scared, and so I suspect that this is a misunderstanding. Maybe Warren did all of this. He's a psychopath. But then, so they feel reassured, and then David notices a smell, and then he sees some blood, and he finds the chest that Warren's body is in, and so he gets scared, and does feels like he doesn't know Jesse and Jade anymore, and he pulls out the gun that's there, and tells Jesse and Jade to back off. But then Chucky and they pull over on the side of the freeway, but Chucky and Tiffany get out a gun and tell everyone to calm down. But David, uh, he's all scared. He like yells at a police car to come over, but after seeing the dolls, he backs up even further into the freeway, and then a truck comes by and hits him, and his body basically explodes. I feel like it maybe even explodes before the truck hits him. This moment in the film has always bothered me. Like the up until this point, the film has been quite fun, but from this point onward, some of it kind of loses me, especially this point. Um, Killing off David, their gay friend who is a great guy and the voice of reason, and he dies in such a stupid way that could have been easily avoided. He just steps backward into the freeway and gets hit by a truck. What? And just the gruesomeness of it, like, it's never sat well for me. And I don't know if Don Mancini thought thought that this would be funny. I do wonder, like, what the execs at the studio may have thought. And Don Mancini, of course, is a gay man, so it's kind of surprising that this would be inserted in this fashion. Like, David is truly one of those deaths that I wish had not happened in the Chucky franchise. Later on, we do get more queer representation as well. You know, especially in the Chucky TV series, we got gay protagonists. So the franchise does not get short of those characters, but in this particular film, you know, I feel like David was done dirty, and it's just really upsetting. I wish that things had, you know, because he's such a nice guy, and it's, yeah, I don't know. Um, like I like him more than Jesse or Jade, to be honest. Um, but yeah, they drive off because they have no choice. You know, Chucky and Tiffany are holding Jesse and Jade hostage. They steal an RV so that, because you know this van is what's being followed. In the RV, Chucky and Tiffany are getting along well. She makes spaghetti and meatballs her specialty. And Jesse remembers a conversation with Tiffany earlier about doing dishes, and so he tells Chucky that, you know, she's not much of a housekeeper, is she? Like, look at those dishes, type thing. And then Chucky tells her to do the dishes, and this escalates way too fast, in my opinion, into an argument. And why would Chucky even care about the dishes? Like, are they even gonna keep on being in this RV with these dishes for very long after trying to put their souls into Jesse and Jade? Like, surely the dishes are the least of his worries, right? And it escalates in an argument. A chaos ensues. Tiffany ends up getting burned in the oven. Like the last stretch of this film from this point onward, when they're at the cemetery, I found this time around kind of dragged for me. And you know, just the whole confrontation, and Tiffany realizes that, you know, look at me, look at us, like we have to die, and she tries killing Chucky and is like, I'll see you in hell. And we do see Chucky's skeleton and the heart of Dembala as well. Uh, Somehow I think rats somehow got into the casket. But yeah, there's that final confrontation where Chucky's like about to get shot. You know, a detective arrives on the scene, and Chucky's like, "I'll be back. I always come back." But of course, he always hates dying. And earlier, he did say if his story was a movie, it would take 3 or 4 sequels to do it justice, which is a very subtle nod that this film series had 3 or 4 sequels at the time. But yeah, Chucky gets shot dead. The detective tells Jesse and Jade to go home and stay put. Um, and, you know, he examines the dead looking Tiffany doll and sort of pokes at it. And it's very awkward, this moment where he's poking at the doll and the like facial expressions he makes. It's I don't know, it's just really awkward. But the doll comes to life very briefly just to give birth to the child that she and Chucky had conceived at Niagara Falls. This is an accelerated gestation period, apparently, and this baby doll is covered in blood, has sharp teeth, and leaps at the detective. So I guess a detective probably dies. And so, yeah, that's Bride of Chucky. Um, like I said, this was a really fun film. It really reinvigorated the franchise, but you know, brought it back from the dead after a 7 year hiatus. But some of those things in the final stretch, I guess, would it be considered the third act? I don't know. Like some of the stuff toward the end doesn't quite work as well for me. I do like some of the comedy, but there were a couple bits that felt like kind of a reach and maybe a little too over the top. But I do appreciate that this film brought the franchise back in the, you know, the general public's interest and whatnot. But it would be another 6 years before the next film, Seed of Chucky, would come out. It's really weird to think that there's as much as 6 years between them, since I kind of think of Bride and Seed as being a pairing and really close to each other in terms of release date, but yeah, it would be a little while. So for Bride of Chucky, on this rewatch, I was wondering to myself, is my score for this gonna go up a bit compared to previous times I've watched it? This kind of has like 8 out of 10 energy to me, but when I got toward the end, I was reminded of the things that didn't quite work for me. And so I feel like some stuff at the end is really messy. So I think that's what kind of drags it down a bit. So I think I'm going to give this one a 7.5 out of 10. It does accomplish some stuff, but some of the stuff toward the end feels messy to me. But yeah, really great relationship to explore between Chucky and Tiffany. She is a new addition to the lore, and could feel like kind of a reach. Like, why didn't we hear about her before? But I think people were really sold on her, and it really did add something without taking away some of the punch of the previous films, if that makes any sense. And she is a character in her own right and wreaks her own havoc throughout the franchise. But all of that will be talked about later. So, like I said, reviewing Seed of Chucky tomorrow on day 5 of Chucktober here on Steven Shinder Reviews in video form. See you all next time.